The night swallows the light quicker in the desolate corners of the country, painting the already unsettling landscape in a thick, terrifying black. Tonight, we look behind the happy facade of everyday life, a prom night, a simple drive home, a first date, a quiet night in a cemetery to find the monsters wearing human faces, or sometimes no face at all. These are the stories of close calls, moments where the shadow of death brushed so near. The survivors are still catching their breath decades later. He is quite Alfred Diest. A new police officer, just 21, still reeling from a shattering breakup, decided to wade into the digital dating pool. He'd signed up for the app, swiped right, and found a connection with a woman named Leah. She was out of his league, he thought, but their conversations flowed, and a first date was set, stargazing at a secluded park outside of her town. He arrived at the hair salon where she supposedly worked, and she emerged, beautiful and beaming, exactly as advertised. The drive to the park was short, but the access road was unsettling. It turned from paved asphalt to jagged dirt almost instantly, feeling less like a public park entrance and more like a private, forgotten trail. He was a cop, fresh out of the academy, fueled by adrenaline and training, but even his internal alarm was beginning to buzz. He turned to her, questioning the path, but she simply reassured him. "It's a secret spot," she whispered, her eyes shining in the dashboard light. They rounded a bend, and a set of headlights appeared, moving slowly toward them. It was a large, aging van. He pulled over, giving the oncoming vehicle plenty of room on the narrow track. But the van didn't pass. Instead, it deliberately swerved at the last moment, stopping dead in front of his car, blocking their escape completely. Instinct took over. He yelled, "Leah, stay here," grabbing his heavy-duty flashlight from the center console. He didn't wait. He charged the van's driver's side door, spotlighting the face of a large, rugged man who looked startled by the aggression. "What are you doing? You just blocked us in," the officer demanded. The man, surprisingly calm, held up his hands. "My apologies, sir. I'm the caretaker for this property. We've been having a severe problem with poachers lately. I mistook your car. Please, enjoy your date." The caretaker backed up the van quickly, performing a tight, efficient three-point turn, and then sped away back up the hill. The officer watched the taillights disappear before returning to his car. He was agitated, but relieved. He looked at Leah, ready to laugh off the bizarre encounter, but she wasn't looking at him. She was hunched over her phone, typing furiously, her eyes fixed on the screen, completely unconcerned by the near confrontation. A tiny red flag fluttered in the officer's mind, but he suppressed it, putting the car into drive. They found the designated spot, a small dirt lot against a sprawling, sloping field, and parked. They laid out a blanket and settled down with wine and snacks. The evening began beautifully. They talked, they laughed, they gazed up at the infinite field of stars. The initial anxiety evaporated. It was an hour later, utterly black outside, when the engine sound came back. It wasn't a slow return. It was a terrorizing descent. The van was flying down the hill, tires churning dirt, its massive shape hurtling towards them like a projectile. It didn't slow until it came to a screeching, deliberate halt right against the nose of the officer's car, boxing him in once again, this time definitively. The caretaker jumped out. In his hand, he held a thick, heavy length of pipe. His face, no longer apologetic, was contorted with cold malice. "Keys and wallet now," he barked. The officer froze, not out of fear, but of disbelief. Then his date, Leah, stood up, but she didn't run to him for safety. She ran straight to the caretaker's side. She turned to the officer, and her beautiful face became the cruel mask of a predator. "Come on, Derek. Give us the keys and your wallet. she demanded, her voice flat and chilling. The officer was hit by the betrayal, the sudden, agonizing realization that every conversation, every smile, every shared detail of vulnerability had been a lie designed to lead him into this dark, forgotten trap. He stood motionless, completely betrayed. Then, Leah walked to the back of the van, opened the door, and retrieved her own weapon, a metal pipe. "We don't want to hurt you," she hissed. And that was the final line. The officer reached under his jacket, drew his off-duty, concealed carry pistol, and leveled it at the pair. "I'm a cop," he announced, his voice surprisingly steady. "Put your hands up. Now." The sight of the weapon shattered their composure. The pipes clattered to the dirt. They raised their hands. As the officer struggled to keep them covered while reaching for his phone to dial 911, the two looked at each other and bolted into the dark, dense tree line. He took off after them for a few steps, but the chase stopped abruptly when he heard the crack of a gunshot fired from the darkness. He wheeled around, sprinted back to his car, and with adrenaline-fueled fury, repeatedly slammed his bumper into the van until he managed to grind his way out and tear away from the terrifying trap. The police arrived later. What they found inside the abandoned van confirmed the horror: an arsenal of knives, saws, chains, duct tape, ropes, and what looked like dried blood on the floor. It was a torture chamber on wheels. When they investigated the hair salon, they were told, "We've never heard of Aaliyah working here." The entire relationship had been an elaborate, chilling setup. The officer was haunted by the singular, terrifying question. Asterisk. What if I hadn't carried my gun that night? Asterisk. Here's this 3, your skib. You can make it to be your skib. Hey friends, you're in Dreamcatcher Stories, your cozy corner for stories that got lost along the way. Tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it there for you? Hit me up in the comments and tell me how this one hits you. Now, let's get sneaky and peek behind the curtain. Life fans, one my. The monsters in the dark don't always use vans and weapons. Sometimes they are hiding in plain sight, living next door. Rewind to 1978, a typical suburban Ohio street. A 16-year-old girl, let's call her Bridget, was waiting for her prom date. She wasn't excited. The boy, Jeffrey, was a known misfit, nervously awkward around girls. When he arrived, Bridget was instantly mortified. He wore a mismatched vest and bow tie instead of a standard tuxedo. He was shaking so badly he couldn't pin the corsage on her dress. The photos taken that night were stiff, awkward, and instantly forgettable. The night went downhill. Jeffrey hated the dance floor. He was visibly uncomfortable in the crowd. Bridget suggested they step away for a bite to eat. Jeffrey pulled out her chair, pushed her in politely, and then simply walked away. He returned much later, explaining he'd gone out to get McDonald's cheeseburgers because he couldn't get back in, and then told her they were stuck outside. Bridget was done. She asked to go home. He apologized profusely, drove her back, and that was that. She only saw him one more time. A week later, Jeffrey invited her to a house party. She went, skeptical, and found no food, no music, and only 3 other people. What Jeffrey wanted to do was hold a seance to communicate with the devil. Bridget was instantly creeped out. She left after a few minutes and never spoke to him again. For 13 years, Jeffrey was just a bizarre, awkward high school memory. Until the 22nd of July, 1991, when Bridget read the newspaper. The headline screamed about a man named Tracy Edwards who escaped an apartment in Milwaukee wearing handcuffs, flagging down police. They followed him back to the apartment where they were greeted by the tenant, a tall, polite man named Jeffrey, who insisted it was all a lover's misunderstanding. But as the officers talked to him, one of them looked past Jeffrey and saw on the coffee table a stack of highly disturbing, instantly recognizable photographs of dismembered body parts. They arrested him. What they found inside his apartment was a true house of horrors. Human remains scattered throughout, several heads in the freezer and refrigerator, and a 57-gallon drum containing decomposing bodies and chemicals. There was evidence, sickeningly, that Jeffrey was consuming his victims. The man who asked Bridget to the prom, the boy who preferred cheeseburgers on a curb to the dance floor, the teen who wanted to conjure demons at a seance was the infamous serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer ***. The horror wasn't just his identity, it was the timing. Just days after their awkward prom photo was taken, Jeffrey Dahmer claimed his very first victim, beginning his 13-year reign of terror that would claim the lives of 17 people. Bridget's uncomfortable night was a literal close call with a monster at the exact moment he was becoming one. Here's in fact the Aptos. Here's Ciacidus. The darkness holds things that defy explanation. Things that are neither human nor animal, but simply wrong. In 2004, deep in the small, rural town of Live Oak, Florida, a young woman we'll call Misty was riding home from church with her mother. The sun was setting, and her mother, an already anxious driver with poor night vision, was speeding to get home before the dense, lightless country road swallowed them completely. The highway was just a straight shot of dirt, lined by thick, unbroken forest. There were no houses, no buildings, no streetlights. It was the middle of nowhere. As they flew down the road, Misty glanced out her mother's window and saw a sight that shouldn't be there. A small girl, sitting on the side of the road, facing the thick woods. "Mom, I saw a little girl. We have to go back," Misty insisted. Her mother, focused on the road, resisted. To turn back meant staying out in the dark longer, but Misty's panic was convincing. Reluctantly, her mother executed a three-point turn and drove slowly back. They drove just half a mile before they spotted her. On the side of the road sat a figure, knees tucked to her chest, rocking back and forth. As they crept closer, they realized she wasn't a little girl, but a young teenager. Most unsettlingly, as the car approached, she didn't turn to look at them. She kept her back to the road, rocking, utterly ignoring the sudden presence of a vehicle in the desolate quiet. Misty's mother decided to drive past first, get a better look, then turn around. 50 yards past the girl, she made another turn. When they looked back, the girl was gone. Not running, not walking, just time's gone ***. It was now almost pitch dark. They drove slowly up and down the short stretch, shining the headlights into the woods, but there was nothing. They rationalized that she must have simply walked back into the forest, perhaps living nearby. They decided to call it a night and sped up, relief washing over them. They drove 2 or 3 more miles, nearing a 4-way intersection, the first sign of civilization. As they approached the stop sign, Misty's mother slammed on the brakes and gasped. On the other side of the intersection, on the shoulder of the road, was the girl. She was sitting in the exact same position, back to the road, knees tucked, rocking back and forth. It was geographically impossible. She would have had to travel multiple miles in pitch darkness, faster than their speeding car, to beat them there. Misty began to panic. "Mom, don't stop! I have a bad feeling about her. Don't stop!" But her mother, though terrified, felt an overwhelming compulsion of responsibility. "We have to check, Misty. We have to ask if she's okay." As her mother slowly eased off the brake, Misty, in pure instinctual terror, ripped off her seatbelt, dove into the passenger side footwell, covered her ears, and squeezed her eyes shut, begging her mother to drive away. The car stopped right next to the silent, rocking figure. Misty's mother leaned over the seat and rolled down the manual window. The cold night air rushed in. Misty heard her mother yell a question into the dark. What followed was a sharp, guttural scream from her mother, a sound of pure, unadulterated horror. The mother slammed the gas pedal to the floor, tires spitting gravel as they tore away. Misty scrambled back up, staring at her mother, who was sobbing uncontrollably, her face pale, driving at a breakneck speed. "What did you see, Mom? What happened?" "I am burnt." It took several attempts for the mother to find her voice, and when she did, it was a fractured whisper of absolute terror. "She didn't have a face," she cried. It was hollow. There was nothing on her face when she looked at me. They never found a trace of the girl. Was it a spectral hitchhiker, a hallucination born of anxiety and darkness, or something ancient and monstrous that simply time's willed times itself ahead of them? The mother never drove at night again. The memory of that chilling, faceless entity remains fixed in the quiet dread of their lives. Heliflive of the Starist. The five end of using of the Starist. Sometimes the danger isn't supernatural. It's the terrible realization that you have stumbled into someone else's evil, a private ceremony of depravity. In the 1990 seconds, two best friends, Rachel and Molly, were full-fledged goths, embracing the aesthetics of all-black clothing, boots, and makeup. Naturally, their favorite hangout was the enormous local cemetery, a massive, wrought-iron gated landscape right in the center of town. Their spot was deep in the back corner, a secluded, private depression between two hills, shielded from both the road and the surrounding houses. One Friday night, they decided to go alone, which was unusual. They preferred to be there with a group for comfort. They drove to the dead-end trail, parked, and walked down into their hidden clearing. They settled by the familiar rock and tree, chain-smoking and talking about high school drama. After an hour, a peculiar smell drifted into the clearing, a bonfire. They looked up the hills but couldn't see anything. They assumed it was college kids burning trash over by the university side of the cemetery, a common occurrence that usually resulted in the police sweeping the grounds. Deciding to leave before they were hassled, they started walking back up the hill towards their car. Halfway up, they gained enough elevation to see over the adjacent hill. They saw it, the flickering, orange glow of a huge bonfire. It was blazing brightly, but still obscured. Molly suggested they sneak up and peek, thinking it would be hilarious to catch the college kids in the act. Rachel hesitated. The location was too remote for a casual college party. It was the farthest corner from campus. Logically, this didn't feel like a party. Despite the unease, they were curious. They walked back down past their rock and started ascending the hill toward the fire. A few steps up, they were engulfed by a sickening, putrid stench, like burning hair, meat, and chemicals. It was so intense they both gagged, instantly covering their mouths and noses. "Oh my God, what times is times that?" Rachel exclaimed too loudly. The words echoed in the cemetery's stillness. They froze, instantly regretting the noise. Silence. Had they been heard? The smell alone was enough to make them turn back. "Let's go, Molly. Now," Rachel urged, her curiosity instantly replaced by profound dread. They turned, walking quickly down, past their spot, and started to climb the hill toward their car. Rachel glanced back at the ridge, where the fire was glowing. And there, standing perfectly silhouetted against the bright blaze, was a man. He was tall, stocky, maybe in his 42nds, and he was simply standing, looking down at them. They had been caught. The two friends turned their heads down, walking faster, feigning indifference. Then, Rachel looked again. The man was gone from the ridge. A split second later, he reappeared, power walking down the hill toward their clearing. "Go, go, go!" Rachel screamed, shoving Molly, and they broke into a dead sprint up the hill to the car. Molly fumbled with the keys. Rachel screamed, urging her to hurry. As the engine roared to life and Molly sped away, Rachel saw him, the man's head appearing over the ridgeline, tracking their escape. They drove out of the cemetery, terrified and confused. What was that smell? Who was that man? The next morning, Rachel's mother broke the news. A woman who worked in the same building had been kidnapped from the parking garage. The police found her body later. The mother of the victim revealed the horrific final detail. The kidnapper had murdered her and then tried to *** dispose of her body by burning her in a bonfire at the cemetery ***. Rachel and Molly instantly knew the truth. That smell, that man, that fire, they hadn't witnessed a party. They had stumbled into a killer's heinous act. They were literally 50 meters away from a real-life monster trying to erase his crime. Their screams, their appearance, had disrupted him. They were lucky they hadn't given in to curiosity and climbed that final ridge. They told the police what they saw, and within 48 hours, the killer was caught driving the victim's car. He confessed. The close call they experienced in the cemetery was the closest anyone had come to being added to a killer's count, simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Donald dies. Now any case then goes. Donald dies, and Donald dies. The most chilling monsters, however, are those who commit the most unthinkable acts, then seek help from the very authorities pursuing them. In the Twin Cities, Minnesota, around New Year's Eve, 1980, the cold air was punctuated by inexplicable violence. The first victim was a 20-year-old woman, found savagely beaten with a tire iron and left for dead. Miraculously, she survived, but the head trauma erased all memory of her attacker. A few hours later, the police received a call. A frantic, male voice, trembling, weak, and sounding utterly devastated. "Please, this is an emergency. Send a squad. There's a girl there. Just hurry." She's laid on the ground in the back by the railroad tracks. The caller provided the exact location, then vanished before giving his identity. 5 months later, the police received another call. This time, the voice was unmistakable, trembling, weak, and crying. "Will you find me? I just stabbed somebody with an ice pick. I can't stop myself. I keep killing somebody else." Police couldn't trace the call, but hours later, the body of an 18-year-old girl who had just moved to Minnesota to start a new life was found. She had been brutally murdered with an ice pick. She had met a man at a diner who offered to show her the city. 15 minutes later, she was dead. 2 days after this murder, the same distraught voice called again, confessing to the crime, sounding utterly tormented. "Don't talk, just listen. I'm sorry what I did to Compton. I couldn't help it. I can't think of being locked up. If I get locked up, I'll kill myself. I'll try not to kill anybody else from this point forward." The police immediately dubbed him the ***, weepy-voiced killer ***. They had his chilling voice on tape, a weaponized plea for help. 6 months later, the calls returned. A woman was found floating in the Mississippi River, stabbed 40 times. She had been seen leaving a bar with a man who had offered her a cigarette. The waitress, unnerved by the interaction, had gotten a good look at the man. When police showed her mugshots, she immediately identified him. Paul Stefani, a 38-year-old man with a history of aggravated assault and mental illness. The weepy-voiced killer had a name. Stefani was immediately placed under surveillance, but he slipped his tail. That same night, he picked up another woman. Sensing danger in a dark alleyway, she fought back, smashing a glass bottle across his head and face. She managed to escape and save her own life. Stefani was badly wounded, and true to his pattern, he reached for the phone. "I need an ambulance. I'm all cut up. I got beat up," the weeping voice told the dispatcher. giving his address. The dispatcher, who had heard the public broadcast of the killer's voice, instantly recognized it. Police converged on the address, apprehending Paul Stefani in his apartment. Stefani pleaded not guilty, but the audio evidence was damning. He was convicted and sentenced to 58 years. 12 years into his sentence, dying of terminal cancer, Paul Stefani finally confessed to the full extent of his horrifying crimes, including another murder the police hadn't even connected to him. He was a monster who repeatedly and successfully used his own distress and the urgency of an emergency call to lure police attention to his victims, all while remaining unseen until his final, self-incriminating call. The suave 70s. I want the right and have to the express. They're reverment of cold. This is the prive have to the techiness. If you can suiting bang. The chilling reality of these 5 stories. The prom date. The faceless presence, the betrayal on a quiet hill, the horrifying smell in the graveyard, and the weeping voice is that the most terrifying encounters are rarely the ones you see coming. They are the moments of vulnerability, the split-second decisions, the terrifying twists that remind you the world is far more dangerous and far more incomprehensible than you allow yourself to believe. The veil between the ordinary and the truly sinister is thinner than you think. And there we go, another memory back from the dark. Don't go too far, I've got more mysteries itching to be told. What do you think was the most terrifying split-second decision in these stories? Bridget's choice to leave the seance? Misty's mother's decision to roll down the window? Or Derek's instinct to draw his weapon? Let me know in the comments below. And if you dare to explore more close calls with real-life monsters and chilling unsolved mysteries, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our community here at Dreamcatcher Stories. Until next time, stay safe and think critically about the shadows.